einfach reinlegen. Also,
was?
Ist da noch Platz vor dir?
Vor mir? Unglaublich. Echt?
28 Präsidenten oder 27 Präsidenten.
Dann nicht abgeschaltet. Das ist 12 Uhr besser.
Good morning, everyone. Hope you're all well. So, I'm leading the Pakistan delegation as Federal Minister for Climate Change and Environment Coordination. Very, very happy to be in Berlin and thank both our joint hosts, which is the German government and the UAE, for this opportunity to reflect on where we stand today before the very important COP28 at what promises to be, I hope, a clear and united stocktake. Why the stocktake is important is because we are at a serious turning point in action. Why I say climate in action, you all know. So we're looking to move forward on finding paths to climate financing that is real, that is actionable, and that is delivered in time without institutionalized red tape to countries that are in need and countries that are in climate catastrophe. So as we speak, Pakistan is facing a rebuilding crisis from a very real flood, and we are also looking towards building new adaptation and resilience goals. We hope that adaptation comes out of the slump slot of the Cinderella kind of slot, if you like, and is equal to mitigation as an ambition and priority. Thank you very much. Look forward to this stocktake.
Hast du Gaffer-Tape da? Hat jemand von euch Gaffer-Tape da? Gaffer.
Martin vielleicht? Martin, hast du Tape? Hast du Tape für Chris? Hast du ein bisschen Tape für Chris?
Ja, das kommt. Der kommt.
Leider nicht, nur Walhams.
Das ist ein Schatz.
Just-in-time production.
Hey, was ich gelernt habe in der Zeit ist zu improvise.
Ja. Gaffer fixes the word, ne?
Das passt. Ich danke dir. Stabil aus. Ist das okay von der Höhe für euch? Ja.
Bist du live? Ich weiß nicht, ob wir live draußen sind.
Achso, ich versuche nicht.
Nee, du warst so ein kleines Mischen.
Okay.
Das ist dein Hinterkopf. Mir ist es wurscht.
So. Wie so oft aus Versehen. Ja. Dann warten wir jetzt mal, ob sich in der nächsten halben Stunde melden. Ja. Ja gut, vielleicht lesen Sie Ihre E-Mails. Ich muss arbeiten. Ja, bis dann. Ciao.
Alle bereit?
Schönen guten Morgen. Während wir hier in Berlin zum Petersberger Klimadialog zusammenkommen, rollt eine sengende Hitzewelle über Nordafrika und Spanien. Im April in Cordoba 38,8 Grad. Das hat es noch nie gegeben. Wir wissen um die Klimakrise. Wir wissen auch, dass wir nicht genug tun, um diese Klimakrise in den Griff zu bekommen. Und deswegen treffen wir uns hier zum Petersberger Klimadialog, Ministerinnen und Minister aus mehr als 40 Ländern, um an Lösungen zu arbeiten. Der Petersberger Klimadialog ist keine normale Konferenz, wo man sich am Ende auf den kleinsten gemeinsamen Nenner einigt, sondern der Petersberger Klimadialog ist eine Arbeitskonferenz, die vor allen Dingen diejenigen zusammenbringt, die wirklich etwas tun wollen. Wir haben auf der letzten Klimakonferenz erlebt, dass wir eben nicht genug erreichen konnten mit allen Staaten dieser Welt. Deswegen wollen wir hier in Berlin diejenigen zusammenbringen von Industriestaaten, von kleinen Inselstaaten, von Schwellenländern, die wirklich Hand anlegen wollen, die out of the box denken und Lösungen dafür finden wollen, wie wir dazu kommen, die Klimakrise wirklich einzudämmen. Letztes Jahr haben wir hier auf diesem Treffen von den ambitionierten Staaten den Weg dafür bereitet, dass wir beim Thema Loss and Damage, Schäden und Verluste dann auf der Klimakonferenz in Sharm el-Sheikh wirklich einen Schritt vorangekommen sind. So wie wir letztes Jahr das Thema Loss and Damage hier in Berlin vorbereitet haben, wollen wir diesmal mehr tun mit Blick auf die erneuerbaren Energien. Wir wissen, dass alle Staaten eigentlich ihre CO2-Ziele deutlich anschärfen müssen. Wir wissen leider auch, dass nicht alle Staaten dazu bereit sind. Deswegen möchte ich bei diesem Petersberger Klimadialog die Debatte darüber eröffnen, ob wir auf der nächsten Klimakonferenz nicht zu einem erneuerbaren Ziel kommen sollten und kommen können. Es gibt Länder wie Deutschland, aber auch andere Länder auf dieser Welt, zum Beispiel Kenia, die klar und deutlich sagen, wir wissen, was die Lösung der Klimakrise ist, nämlich saubere Technologien, erneuerbare Energien. Und wenn wir die massiv ausbauen, insbesondere auch in Afrika, dann können wir gemeinsam dafür sorgen, dass wir doch noch auf den 1,5 Grad Pfad kommen, der unsere Lebensversicherung als Weltgemeinschaft ist. Und dafür steht dieser Klimadialog hier in Berlin. Nicht kleine gemeinsame Nenner zu suchen, sondern an pragmatischen Lösungen zu arbeiten, vor allen Dingen auch über geopolitische Gräben hinweg. Und daher freut es mich sehr, dass hier eben so unterschiedliche Länder beieinander sind, ganz kleine Inselstaaten, die die Auswirkungen dieser Klimakrise so massiv schon spüren, Industriestaaten, die intensiv an Lösungen zur Bekämpfung der Klimakrise arbeiten, Länder aus Afrika, die zeigen, dass insbesondere auch in Afrika der Ausbau der erneuerbaren Energien eine Chance ist, nämlich endlich den Kontinent zu elektrifizieren. Und diese Länder zusammenzubringen aus unterschiedlichsten Ecken aus der Welt, dafür steht für mich dieser Petersberger Klimadialog. Herzlichen Dank.
Vielen Dank.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. A wonderful good morning. Happy to see you all here in the Weltsaal, in the Foreign Office. Would the wonderful ministers please start to take their places, and everybody who is accompanying them will find their seats just behind them. Everybody else who might not find a seat, there is another opportunity to watch everything, seeing that we're live streaming. So could you please go to the Europasaal?
It seems that the king of Jordan used to work in the So I could answer all things like that.
Excellencies, ministers, honored ladies and gentlemen, and everybody else, thank you so much for having come here to the Foreign Office in Germany to participate in the Petersburg Climate Dialogue 2023. We all know it's become a good tradition to gather before the hustle and bustle of the COP this year, COP28 in Dubai, and to have a quieter, smaller meeting, sometimes out of the box thinking and arrangement, as you can see by the rotunda here. And ladies and gentlemen, it's maybe becoming more essential to actually have that pre-gathering to already sort of collect the thoughts in the right direction. And I've just been told that, for example, the progress made on loss and damage was done and initiated at the Petersburg Dialogue last year, so I'm very sure it's going to happen again this year on other issues. It's a safe space for dialogue. Welcome to everybody who's on the live stream. We're going to have a live stream until round about 10 past, quarter past 11, and then we're going to have a discussion entre nous. And it's always been that it's a group of equals meeting, again demonstrated physically by the rotunda here. I've been around for quite a while on climate dialogues and talks and whatever, but at COP23 I learned one essential thing. You can't negotiate with physics. And all the IPCC reports that we've had in the last years actually substantiate that. The question is just how do we react? And even the last IPCC report actually told us there are solutions, there are options for actions. It's just a question, what are we going to do? And I'm quite sure that the next day and a half is actually going to prove that you can solve it. The sense of urgency, of course, remains. And ladies and gentlemen, this is the moment where I have the pleasure to present to you the co-chairs of the Petersburg Climate Dialogue 2023, Her Excellency Annalena Baerbock, the German Federal Minister of Foreign Affairs, and of course she's also the host of this wonderful venue that we're in. Dankeschön, dass Sie da sind und auch so pünktlich da gewesen sind.
Thank you for being here on time.
Dr. Sultan Al-Jaber, President-designate of COP28 and Minister of Industry and Advanced Technology of the United Arab Emirates. Marhaba and salam alaikum. And so with that, ladies and gentlemen, I would actually like to invite the German Minister for Foreign Affairs, Annalena Baerbock, to come to the lectern and share her thoughts with us and get us started into the Petersburg Dialogue. Thank you so much.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and I will speak in German, so your headphones are on the table. And as the chair said, this is a special setting because this is a special conference. Lieber Dr. Sultan Al-Jaber, liebe
Dr. Sultan Al-Jaber,
liebe
dear Mia Motley,
Kollegen,
dear
sehr
colleagues,
geehrte Gäste.
ladies and gentlemen, dear guests.
Standard operating procedures for planned relocations.
Standard operating procedures for
Das
planned
ist der trockene
relocations.
Titel eines
This
Dokuments,
is
das
the
die
dry
Regierung
title of a
von
document that
vor
the government
2
of
Wochen
Fiji
vorgestellt hat.
presented 2 weeks ago.
Standard operating procedures. Standardverfahren auf Deutsch.
Standard
Das klingt
procedures
erstmal technisch,
sounds
nach
technical
Routine
at
und vor
first.
allen
It
Dingen
sounds
nach
like
Bürokratie.
routine, and above all,
Aber der Anlass
it
dieses
reminds us
Dokumentes
of red
könnte für die
tape.
Menschen
But
auf
the
Fidschi
cause behind
kaum
this
dramatischer
document, the
sein.
reason for that
Denn
document,
mit
could
diesen
not be more
Richtlinien
dramatic for the people
unterstützt
living
die
in
Regierung
Fiji.
Menschen
These
dabei,
procedures are meant to support people
bevor
being
ihr Zuhause
relocated
vom
before
steigenden
their
Meeresspiegel
homes are being
verschluckt.
swallowed up by the rising sea level.
Schon jetzt erodieren viele
Already
Ufer,
now, many
ein halbes
shore areas
Dutzend
are
Dörfer
eroding.
mussten
A half
bereits
dozen of villages had already
steigende Meeresspiegel
been
sind eine
relocated.
Gefahr, die für
Rising
die
sea
Bewohnerinnen
levels
und Bewohner von
constitute a danger, a
Inselstaaten
threat
heute
that has
leider zu
become
ihrer
everyday
Lebensrealität
reality
gehört.
for those people who live on
Und das
island
macht
states.
deutlich, was seit dem Beginn
And this
des
illustrates
Petersberger Klimadialogs
what has
vor 13
happened
Jahren
since the beginning of the
passiert ist.
Petersberg Climate Dialogue
Als die
13 years
damalige
ago,
Bundeskanzlerin Angela
when the
Merkel
then
vor
Federal
13
Chancellor
Jahren den
Angela
ersten
Merkel,
Klimadialog
13 years
in
ago,
Bonn eröffnet hat,
opened the first
da haben wir
climate
noch über
dialogue in Bonn.
Szenarien und
We
Prognosen
spoke
der
about
Klimakrise
scenarios
gesprochen.
and about forecasts
So
of
mancher
climate
Politiker
crisis.
musste sogar noch davon überzeugt
We also
werden,
had to
dass der
convince the
Klimawandel kein
politician
Hirngespinst
of the fact that climate
oder
change was
Panikmache
not the
ist.
figment of the imagination
Heute
of
aber sprechen wir über eine
environmentalists or people who
Krise,
were
die da ist.
trying to create
In der
panic.
Realität
Today we're
im
talking
Hier
about
und
a
heute,
crisis that
im
has
Jetzt.
arrived, a crisis
Und
that
die
is here, in the
Sicherheit
here
von
and now,
Millionen
and the
von Menschen
security of
weltweit
millions of
bedroht,
people
jede
across the
Stunde,
globe
jeden
is being
Tag.
threatened every hour, every day.
Deswegen ist unser Treffen heute
And
hier
this
so
is what
wichtig.
makes our meeting today so
Denn der
important.
Petersberger Klimadialog
For the climate
ist und
dialogue, the
bleibt
Petersberg
der Ort,
Climate
wo
Dialogue
wir
is and
Allianzen
remains the
bilden
place where
können
we
unter
can form
Nationen,
alliances
die
amongst
vorangehen
nations
wollen.
that are willing to take the lead.
Industrienationen,
Developed
Inselstaaten,
nations,
Schwellenländer
island
und die
states,
Zivilgesellschaft
developing
kommen hier
countries
zusammen.
and civil society
Hier
have
wollen wir
come
die
here to
Grundlagen
meet
für
and
gemeinsame
to exchange
Beschlüsse
views.
auf
It is here
der
that we want to lay the
Weltklimakonferenz
foundations for common decisions
Und hier
to be
kommen wir
taken at the
mit
UN Climate
konkreten
Conference.
Partnerschaften für den
And it is here
Klimaschutz auch
that
über
we
geopolitische
also
Grenzen
managed to
hinweg
cut across
in den
geopolitical
Dialog.
rifts
Denn
and
das
begin a
alles brauchen
dialogue
wir
with the
mehr
assistance
denn je.
of concrete partnerships.
Wir
And
stehen
we
mit der
need this more than
Klimakrise
ever
gemeinsam
before,
vor der
because in the
größten
climate crisis we are all
Sicherheitsherausforderung
together facing the
unseres
biggest
Jahrhunderts.
security challenge of our decade
Alle,
and
die
of our
heute hier
century.
versammelt sind,
All
können
those
ihren
who have
Beitrag zur
assembled here
Klimakrise,
can make their
zur
contribution
Eindämmung der
towards
Klimakrise
limiting
leisten.
the climate crisis.
Denn, und das ist die gute Nachricht des jüngsten
The good news
IPCC-Berichts,
contained in the
wir haben
recent
die
IPCC
politischen
status
Instrumente.
report is that we
Wir
do
haben
have
die
the political
finanziellen
instruments
Mittel
we
auf der
need.
Welt
We
und
have
die
the
technischen
financing
Lösungen,
we need, and
um
we have the
diese
technical
Krise
and technological solutions to work against
Damit wir
the
das schaffen,
crisis.
sind aus meiner
And in
Sicht
order for us
drei
to be
Dinge
successful in doing
zentral.
so, three things are of central
Erstens, und das ist
importance
mehr
as
als
I see it.
selbsterklärend,
First,
brauchen wir eine drastische
and that
Reduzierung von
is something everyone
Treibhausgasen.
will agree to, we need to
Bei der
drastically
nächsten
reduce
COP in
greenhouse gas
Dubai
emissions.
werden wir zum
At the
ersten Mal
next
eine
COP in
globale
Dubai, we will
Bestandsaufnahme
for the first
vornehmen,
time
mit der wir überprüfen, wo wir bei der
undertake a
Einhaltung
global
der
stocktake,
Klimaziele
allowing us to
von
review
Paris
where we are with regard to
2015
implementing
sind.
the climate targets defined in
Ich
Paris
glaube, man
in
braucht keine Glaskugel,
2015.
um
I
vorherzusehen,
don't
dass
think
die
we
Wissenschaft
need a
uns
crystal ball
dabei
to be
kein
able to
gutes
predict
Zeugnis
that the
ausstellen
scientists
wird,
are not going to give
weil
us a
wir
good
viel zu
report
langsam
card,
sind seit
because we have been far
2015.
too slow ever since
Lieber Dr.
2015.
Sultan
Dear Dr.
Al-Jaber, ich bin
Sultan
deshalb
Al-Jaber,
froh, dass ihr euch
thus
für eure
I am
COP-Präsidentschaft
pleased
auch vorgenommen
that
habt, einen klaren
amongst the
Fahrplan
objectives you've set yourself for your COP presidency, you've also set the target to define a clear roadmap, allowing us to keep 1.5
Wir werden alles
degrees
tun,
within
um euch
reach.
dabei
We
zu
will do
unterstützen
everything
und
we
die
can in order to
Klimakonferenz
support you
in diesem
in
Sinne zu
achieving
einem
this
Erfolg
endeavour
werden zu
and
lassen.
ensuring that COP becomes
Denn
a
wir alle
success
wissen,
in
es
that
reicht
regard.
nicht
For we
zu
all know
beschreiben,
full well that
dass
it is
wir
not
unsere Ziele
enough
nicht einhalten.
to say and
Wir
to
müssen
put down
sagen,
in
wie
writing
wir
that we are
den
not
Kurs
adhering to
ändern
our
wollen,
targets. We have to say
endlich
how we
zurück auf
want
den
to change
1,5 Grad
course
Pfad zu kommen.
in order to allow us to get
Ein Schlüssel dafür liegt im
on track for
Energiesektor,
1.5
der mehr
degrees.
als 40%
The energy
der
sector provides
weltweiten
one of the keys, I
CO2-Emissionen
believe.
verursacht.
Energy is responsible for
Die
more than
internationale
40% of global
Energiebehörde
CO2
schätzt, dass
emissions.
wir die
And the
weltweiten
IEA
Kapazitäten
has
von
estimated
erneuerbaren
that we
Energien
will have to
verdreifachen
triple
müssen,
capacities of
sonst werden die
renewables. If we
Schmerzgrenze
were
des
not to do
Planeten
so,
von
we would
1,5
have
Grad
clearly
deutlich
surpassed
überschritten werden.
the limit of 1.5
Mein Land,
degrees.
Deutschland, hat sich dazu verpflichtet, bis 2030
Germany, my
seinen Strom
country,
zu
has committed
80% aus
itself to
erneuerbaren Energien zu
producing
beziehen.
electricity from
Aber auch hier
80% of
gilt,
its
dass wir
electricity
nicht
from
das
renewables by
Patentrezept
2030.
haben.
But here too, it's true
Auch
to
wir
say
waren
that
zu
this is
lange
not a
abhängig
panacea.
von russischem
Far
Gas.
too long we
Wir
have
hätten
been dependent
früher aus
on
der
Russian
Kohle
oil and
aussteigen
gas.
sollen
We should have
und wir
phased
hätten
out
mehr
coal much
Wind- und
earlier, and
Solarkraftwerke
we should have
bauen
set up
können.
more wind and
Das
solar
ist vergossene Milch.
plants.
Das Wichtige ist,
But
aus diesen
there's no
Fehlern zu
use crying
lernen
over
und dass
spilt
wir
milk.
gelernt
We have to
haben.
learn from the mistakes
Wir stehen
we've
zu unseren
committed. We
ambitionierten
stand by our
Zielen und wir wollen
ambitious
unsere
goals and
Partnerinnen
targets,
und
and we
Partner dabei
plan and
unterstützen,
intend to
diesen
support our
Weg
partners
ebenfalls zu
in
gehen.
doing the same.
Innerhalb der G7 haben wir uns
Within the
daher
G7
gerade
we
jetzt
have
konkrete
thus
Ziele gegeben für den
set
Ausbau
ourselves
der
concrete
Wind- und
targets for
Solarenergie.
expanding wind and solar energy.
Ich setze mich dafür ein, dass wir uns auch auf ein
I am
globales
working to
Ziel
ensure
für
that
erneuerbare
we can agree a
Energien
global target
und
for renewables
Energieeffizienz
and energy
einigen.
efficiency.
Ja, das ist etwas Neues.
Yes, I know
Deswegen
this is
sitzen
a
wir
new
auch in so einem
aspect.
besonderen Setting
This is why
hier,
we
weil wir
have
nicht
prepared a
beschreiben wollen,
special
was wir
setting
alles
for
schon
you.
gemacht haben
We do not
oder was
intend to
alles
describe
nicht
things we
geht,
have
sondern
done
in
or
den
the things
nächsten
we've not been able
anderthalb
to
Tagen
do.
daran arbeiten
What we
wollen,
want to do is
was
to
wir
make use
noch
of these
mehr
one
machen
day
können,
and a
auch
half
Neues
to
machen
define
können,
what we
damit
can
wir
do
auf den
on top of what we
1,5
have done,
Grad
the new
kommen.
things we can do
Und
in
jeder
order to
kann,
achieve
und deswegen
1.5
ist diese
degrees. And
Konferenz aus meiner
everyone
Sicht auch
can
so
make a
besonders, weil hier nicht
contribution. And I
gleich
think
und
that
gleich
that makes our
zusammenkommen, sondern
conference so special,
unterschiedliche Länder
because we're bringing
zusammenkommen,
together all
mit
kinds of
unterschiedlichen
countries, different
Blickweisen, die aber
countries with
alle
their
das
own
gleiche Ziel
perspectives, their
haben,
own views
diese
of things,
Klimakrise
but
in den Griff
all
zu
aiming
bekommen.
for the same target
Und
and
dazu
objective,
ist
that is
eben die
tackling climate
unterschiedliche
change
Sichtweise
and
eines
tackling
jeden
the
Landes
climate
so
crisis.
wichtig.
And thus, the
Vor
perspective
wenigen
every
Wochen
country
hat
has
zum
to bring
Beispiel
to the
hier genau
table
in
is so
diesem Saal der
important.
kenianische
A few
Staatspräsident
weeks
William
ago, the
Ruto
Kenyan State
gesprochen
President William
über die
Ruto spoke here in
Energiepläne
this very same
seines
room,
Landes.
and he
Und
defined
das
the
war mehr
energy
als
plans of his
beeindruckend.
country. A
Bis
very impressive
2030
experience
will
indeed, I
Kenia
have to
seinen
say,
kompletten
because
Strom
Kenya plans
vollständig
to
aus
get all of
erneuerbaren
its electricity from
Energien beziehen.
renewables by
Und Präsident
2030.
Ruto hat etwas
And
gesagt, das
President
für uns
Ruto
alle
also
gilt.
said something that is true for all
Dieser
of
Umbruch
us.
ist auch eine riesige
This
Chance für die
fundamental
wirtschaftliche
transformation
Entwicklung.
constitutes a giant opportunity
Derzeit
for
haben
economic
600 Millionen
development.
Menschen in
Right
afrikanischen
now,
Staaten
600 million people
keinen
in African
Zugang zu
countries have no
Elektrizität.
access to
Das ist
electricity.
fast die Hälfte der
This is
gesamten
almost half
Bevölkerung.
of the total population
Aber
of
obwohl
Africa.
Afrika laut der Internationalen
But although
Energieagentur
the IAEA says
60%
that
der
Africa
besten
is location and
Solarstandorte
home to
weltweit
60% of the
beheimatet,
best solar
werden
locations,
momentan
right
nur
now about
1% der
1%
weltweiten
of global
Solaranlagen
solar
dort in
plants
Afrika
are being
verbaut.
set up in Africa.
Wenn sich das ändert, wenn wir
Now,
das
if that were to
gemeinsam ändern,
change, if we
dann
were able to
verbessert
change
dies
that
eben
together,
nicht
this
nur
would mean
unseren
that this
Weg
would not only
zu unseren
improve the
Klimazielen,
path
sondern auch
towards
das
our
Leben von
climate targets,
Millionen
it would
von
also,
Menschen.
in concrete terms, improve the lives
Die
of
globale
millions of people.
Transformation ist, das sieht
The
man auch
global
daran so deutlich,
transformation
eben nicht nur der Schlüssel
is not
zur
only the
Bekämpfung der
key
größten Sicherheitsgefahr dieses Jahrhunderts,
tackling the greatest danger and
sondern
threat to security of our
die
century.
Energietransformation, die
The energy
erneuerbaren Energien sind
transformation,
auch
the
ein
use of
Schlüssel
renewables
zu
also
weltweit
provides
mehr
a key
Gerechtigkeit.
to greater
Und die
justice
globale
and equity
Transformation
in the
ist in
world.
vollem Gange.
And the global
An den meisten
transformation
Orten
is in
der
full
Welt
swing.
sind
In
erneuerbare
most
Energien
parts of
schon
the world,
heute
renewables already
die
today
ökonomisch sinnvollste
constitute
Form der
the
Energiegewinnung.
most sensible form of energy
Unser Anspruch für
production
die
in
COP in
economic
Dubai
terms.
muss es sein, das
Our
Ende
objective
des
for
Zeitalters
COP
der fossilen
28 in
Energien
Dubai has to be
einzuläuten.
to usher in the end of the age
Aber die
of fossil
Wissenschaft ist
energy.
klar. Selbst
And
wenn uns diese
science speaks a clear
Transformation
language.
gelingt
Even
und
if
wir
we
es
were to
schaffen, die
succeed in bringing
Erderwärmung
about
auf
that
1,5
transformation, and
Grad
if
zu
we were to
begrenzen,
succeed to limit
werden
global
die
warming to
Umwälzungen für
1.5
unsere
degrees,
Umwelt und Wirtschaft
the sweeping
so groß
changes
sein,
our
dass
environment
viele
and
Staaten
economies
sie
will be
nicht
confronted
alleine
with will be
bewältigen
so
können.
enormous that many countries
bringt
would
mich
not
zu
be
meinem
able to
zweiten
tackle
Punkt.
them on their own.
Wenn
Which
wir eine
brings me to my
gerechte
second
Lösung
point.
wollen,
If we
dann
want a
geht es
just
auch
solution,
darum,
then this is
die
also
verletzlichsten
about
Staaten dabei zu
supporting the most
unterstützen,
vulnerable
sich auf die
countries
Folgen der
in being able to
Klimakrise
prepare for
einzustellen.
the impact of the climate crisis.
Etwa indem sie ihre
For
Landwirtschaft
example,
auf
by helping
Tröpfchenbewässerung
them
umstellen oder
adapt
indem
their
sie Konzepte
agriculture,
wie
introducing
Umsiedlungspläne auf
trickle or
Fidschi
drip
erstellen,
irrigation,
an dem
helping them
übrigens
draw
auch
up
Fachleute
concepts like the
des
relocation
deutschen
plans for Fiji, in
Entwicklungsministeriums
which,
der
above all,
Entwicklungszusammenarbeit der
and
GIZ
just as a side
mitgearbeitet
remark,
haben.
experts of GIZ also
Und wir müssen mit Schäden der
cooperated.
Klimakrise
And we
umgehen, die
have to
nicht mehr
address
zu
the damage
beheben
done
sind.
by the climate crisis that can no
Bei der
longer
COP
be
in Sharm el-Sheikh
reversed.
haben wir uns darauf geeinigt,
At
neue
COP27 Sharm
Finanzierungsmechanismen
el-Sheikh, we
aufzusetzen,
agreed that we
mit denen
were
die großen
to create new
Verursacher von
finance measures
Treibhausgasen
and
die
mechanisms
verwundbarsten Staaten bei Schäden
ensuring
und
that the major
Verlusten
emitters of greenhouse
unterstützen
gases were to
werden.
support those countries
Dafür haben wir letztes Jahr
most
auch
vulnerable
auf dem Petersberger Klimadialog
in the area of
den
loss and damage.
Startschuss gegeben,
We
weil wir die
have
Debatte, auch die kontroverse Debatte,
sent out a
eröffnet haben.
parting,
Wir wollen jetzt
starting signal
gemeinsam
because
bis zur
we've
COP in
begun
Dubai
a controversial
daran
debate
arbeiten,
and we want
konkrete
to use the
Fortschritte
time
zu machen,
until
auch
Dubai
für
to
einen
achieve concrete
Fonds
progress
für
here,
Loss
also with
and
regard
Damage.
to setting up a fund for loss and
Das ist
damage.
nicht nur eine Frage der
This is not only a
Gerechtigkeit, das
question
liegt
of
auch in
justice and
unserem
equity, it
Sicherheitsinteresse.
is also in our very own
Denn wo die
security interest.
Klimakrise den Menschen die
In
Lebensgrundlage
those areas where the
entzieht,
climate crisis
befeuert sie auch Krisen und Konflikte,
takes away from people
die
their
ganze
livelihood, it
Regionen
fuels crises
destabilisieren
and
können.
conflicts that can lead to a
Klar ist,
destabilization of
dass
a
all diese
region
Maßnahmen Geld
at
kosten
large.
werden, und das ist mein
And it is
dritter
clear
Punkt.
that these measures will
Wir haben als
require funding,
Industriestaaten
which brings me to
zugesagt,
my third
dafür
point.
jährlich
The
100
developed countries
Milliarden
promised to
US-Dollar
make
zur Verfügung zu
available
stellen.
100 billion
Und ich
US
kann
dollars
nachvollziehen,
every
dass
year. And I
etliche
do
Länder,
understand
insbesondere diejenigen, die am
very
meisten
well
unter der
that many
Klimakrise
developing
leiden,
countries and
uns
those that are
fragen,
most affected by the
warum
impact of the
bezahlt ihr
climate
jedes
crisis
Jahr
turn to us and
weniger,
say,
als ihr uns
why are you
versprochen habt?
paying less than you promised
Gestern
year
haben wir
after year?
gemeinsam daher mit Kanada ein
This is why
Treffen
we
von
organized a
Geberländern
meeting of
organisiert,
donor countries
zu schauen,
together with
wo wir
Canada
stehen
yesterday, in order to
vor
take
allen Dingen,
stock
zu
of where we
schauen, wie wir
stand and above all
endlich
to
diese
see
Lücke schließen
how we
können.
can finally close
Die
that
gute
gap.
Nachricht ist,
The good
so wie
news
es
that I
jetzt
have to
aussieht,
convey
sind
is
wir auf
that as
einem Weg,
things look
dass
right
wir
now,
dieses
we are
Jahr
on a good
endlich
track to
die Summe
finally
von 100
make good
Milliarden
on this amount
US-Dollar
of 100
erreichen
billion
können.
US dollars this year.
Wir haben als Bundesregierung, als deutsche
The
Bundesregierung
German
zugesagt,
federal
unseren
government
Beitrag zur internationalen
committed itself
Klimafinanzierung
to
auf mindestens 6
enhancing its
Milliarden
international
Euro zu
climate
erhöhen.
finance to a minimum of 6
Aber uns ist
billion
völlig klar,
euro.
das reicht nicht. Wir müssen
But we are very much
für die
aware of
notwendige
that not being
Transformation und
enough. We need to
Anpassungsmaßnahmen an die
mobilize
Klimakrise
several billions
mehrere
for the
Billionen
necessary
mobilisieren.
transformation and adaptation
Öffentliche
to the
Mittel
climate
allein werden
crisis.
diesen Bedarf
And public
nicht
funds
abdecken
will
können.
not suffice on their
Deswegen
own.
geht es
They
darum,
will
auch
not cover the
massiv
need.
private
And
Mittel
this is
zu
also
mobilisieren.
very much about mobilizing
Gemeinsam mit den
private
USA setzt
funds
sich Deutschland
to a
dafür
massive
ein,
extent.
dass
With the
wir
United
dies
States, Germany is
insbesondere mit Blick auf
working
die Reform beim IWF
to do so,
und
and
bei
we
der
aim
Weltbank
also to
tun.
bring about the necessary reforms of
Wir
the
wollen
IMF and the World
Klimafinanzierung zum
Bank.
festen
We want to make
Bestandteil
climate
des
finance a firm
Geschäftsmodells
element
der
of the
Weltbank
business
machen,
model of the World Bank,
damit wir mehr grüne
so as to
Investitionen
allow us to
ermöglichen.
carry out and make possible
Hinzu
more
kommt ein
green
weiteres
investment.
Problem.
And there is an
60%
additional
der Länder
problem
mit
here.
niedrigen
60%
Einkommen
of the
haben ein
countries with low
hohes
income
Verschuldungsrisiko
run a high risk
oder
of
befinden sich
becoming
bereits in
very
einer
indebted or are
Verschuldungskrise.
already in the midst of a
Das
debt
gilt zum
crisis.
Beispiel für den
This
Inselstaat
is true,
Dominica.
for example, for the island state of
Als der
Dominica.
Wirbelsturm Maria
When the
dort
Hurricane
im Jahr
Maria
2017 auf die Insel
hit them,
traf, da
the
hat er
island
Schäden
of
in Höhe
Dominica
von
in 2017, it
626%
created damage
des
that equaled
Bruttoinlandsproduktes
226%
hinterlassen.
of its GDP.
Diese Schäden
In
zu
order
beheben,
to
musste Dominica neue
address
Schulden
that damage,
aufnehmen.
Dominica
Zu viel
was
höheren
forced to
Zinssätzen
take on
als
new debt at much
Industriestaaten,
higher
die in
interest
dem Moment
rates
nicht
than developed
getroffen worden
countries
sind
that
von
had
einem
not been
Wirbelsturm.
hit at the very same time by a
Dadurch hat nicht nur die
hurricane.
Verschuldung des Landes
As a
zugenommen, es
consequence,
blieb auch zu
not only
wenig
the debt
Geld,
of the
um
country
sich auf den
increased,
nächsten
it also
Sturm
was faced with a
vorzubereiten.
situation where it did not have
Oder
enough funds in
in
order to
erneuerbare
prepare for the
Energien
next
zu
hurricane
investieren,
or to invest
geschweige
in
denn in
renewables,
Bildung und Gesundheit.
to say nothing of investments in
Diesen
education and health.
Teufelskreis zu durchbrechen,
In
in dem
order
viele
to
Länder
break out
stecken,
of this
die
vicious
besonders
circle
von der
that many countries
Klimakrise
find themselves
bedroht
in,
sind,
that are especially
braucht
hard
es
hit by the climate crisis,
endlich
we
Maßnahmen
need to
zur
finally agree
Restrukturierung
on
von
measures that
Auch
aim to
deswegen sind wir
restructure
heute
debt.
hier,
And this is
dass wir
also
darüber
one of the
sprechen.
reasons why we're here today.
Hier
We want to
sind
speak
alle
about this.
Gläubiger
Because we are
weltweit
all
in der Verantwortung.
creditors and all the creditors
Denn die
bear a
Verschuldungskrise nimmt
responsibility
gerade
here
den
for the
Ländern die Luft
indebted,
zum
the
Atmen,
debt
die
crisis is
Investitionen gegen die Klimakrise am
depriving the
nötigsten
people
bräuchten.
of those, in those countries of the
Meine
air
Damen
to
und
breathe
Herren,
that
liebe
need
Kolleginnen und
investments against the
Kollegen,
climate crisis
seit
most
dem ersten
urgently.
Petersberger
Ladies and gentlemen,
Klimadialog
dear colleagues,
ist der
since the
globale
first Petersberg
Meeresspiegel
Climate Dialogue,
durchschnittlich um fast
global sea
5
levels have
Zentimeter
on average
angestiegen.
risen by almost 5
Für die Menschen auf
centimeters.
Fidschi oder Dominica
For the people
ist das
living in
eine
Fiji or
lebensbedrohliche
Dominica, this
Katastrophe.
is a life-threatening
Für uns
catastrophe.
alle ist diese Krise die
For all
größte
of us, this crisis
Sicherheitsherausforderung
constitutes the
unserer
greatest
Zeit.
security challenge of our time.
Zugleich haben wir die historische Chance,
At the
mit den
same time, we
richtigen
have the
Antworten auf die
historic
Klimakrise
opportunity
jetzt in
to
diesem
take
Jahrzehnt
advantage of economic
die wirtschaftlichen
opportunities that this
Chancen
fundamental
dieses
transformation
fundamentalen
opens up
Umbruchs
by
zu
giving
ergreifen.
the right responses to the climate
Dafür
crisis
brauchen wir
now,
auf der anstehenden
this decade.
COP28 eine
At the
Kurskorrektur,
upcoming
mit der
COP28,
wir
we
auf den
need to correct
1,5
our
Grad
course.
Pfad
We need to
kommen.
follow a track that leads
Und
us
ja,
to the 1.5 degrees
Klimapolitik ist
go.
auch
And yes,
Interessenpolitik.
climate policy is also a question
Aber
of
ein
protecting
Interesse
interests.
haben wir
But
alle
there is one interest that we
gemeinsam.
all have in common.
Vom kleinen
Be we
Inselstaat
a
bis
small
zur
island
großen
state or a
Industrienation.
major
Wir
industrialized
wollen,
country.
dass
We
wir
want
und
to
unsere
make
Kinder
sure
in
that
einer
we
sicheren
and our
Welt
children
auch in Zukunft
continue
leben
to
können.
live in a safe world in
Lassen
the
Sie uns die
future
Ärmel
too.
hochkrempeln und die kommenden
Let
2
us roll up our
Tage
sleeves.
dafür nutzen, auf
Let us
diesem
make
Weg
use of the coming 2
voranzukommen.
days to make headway
Herzlichen Dank.
on this track. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mrs. Baerbock. And from now on, your interventions will be in English, but this was, of course, important to have that speech in German, seeing that we are here in Berlin. And now, ladies and gentlemen, the next speaker I probably don't have to introduce at all. You know, everybody here in this room knows him. Suffice to say that we're very honored that the UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres has taken the time to pre-record a message, a video message for us. And equally, everybody here in this room knows how urgent he considers the issue of climate action to be. So, ladies and gentlemen, let's give him our ears and our eyes, His Excellency Antonio Guterres.
The climate crisis demands honesty. We can only solve problems if we name them and look them squarely in the eye. The truth is, on climate we know what to do, when to do it and why. But for too long we have looked the other way. We know because the International Panel on Climate Change tells us that breaching 1.5 degrees, even temporarily, could be disastrous. Yet, temperatures are set to rise 2.8 degrees by the end of the century if we maintain the present policies. We know that the 1.5 degree limit requires halving global emissions by 2030. Yet, they are on course to rise 10% by then compared to 2010. And we know that the 1.5 degree pathway is possible, yet we will only achieve it with a quantum leap in climate action globally. We must be upfront about what this requires. It requires cooperation, rising above geopolitical divisions, climate justice, developed countries and international financial institutions delivering on long overdue finance, and cleaning up our economies, breaking our fossil fuel addiction and driving decarbonization in every sector. Excellencies, we must act on science, facts and truth. I have proposed to the G20 a Climate Solidarity Pact in which all big emitters make extra efforts to cut emissions and wealthier countries support emerging economies to be able to do so. And last month, I presented a plan to supercharge efforts to achieve this through the acceleration agenda. This proposes that all countries eat fast forward on their net zero deadlines. It asks developed countries to commit to reaching net zero as close as possible to 2040, the limit they should all aim to respect. And emerging economies to commit to reaching net zero as close as possible to 2050, again, the limit they should all aim to respect. This is in line with the principle of common but differentiated responsibilities and respective capabilities in light of different national circumstances as reaffirmed in Paris. The acceleration agenda urges countries to pool their resources, scientific capacities and technologies. It asks them to phase out coal by 2030 in OECD countries and 2040 in all others. To make electricity generation net zero by 2035 in developed countries and 2040 in all others, while providing access to electricity for all. To stop permitting, funding and expanding coal, oil and gas, both old and new. And to speed up the decarbonization of major sectors, from shipping, aviation and steel to cement, aluminium and agriculture, working with the private sector. The acceleration agenda also calls for an overhaul of the priorities and business models of multilateral development banks, so the trillions of dollars in private finance, which have long been talked about, finally flow to the green economy. It calls on developed countries to deliver the 100 billion this year, as pledged in Glasgow, to replenish the Green Climate Fund, and to deliver on their finance commitments on adaptation. Despite the promise made in Glasgow to double adaptation finance by 2025, parity between adaptation and mitigation finance remains too far off. Excellencies, I will welcome first movers on the acceleration agenda to the Climate Ambition Summit I am hosting this September in New York, those with concrete actions and commitments. And COP28, 2 months later, will see the first global stocktake of the Paris Agreement, showing us plainly where we stand in the fight for 1.5 degrees. It will also launch the next cycle of national climate plans or national determined contributions, which must reflect the acceleration we need. By the end of COP28, I count on all G20 leaders to have committed to ambitious new national determined contributions covering all greenhouse gases and the whole economy, and indicating absolute emission cuts targets for 2035 and 2040. And I urge all parties to ensure that COP28 delivers on loss and damage funding. Remember one simple fact: addressing loss and damage is about saving lives. And do not allow the historic COP27 agreement to be derailed. Excellencies, on climate we know the truth. Please act on it now. Thank you.
And I'm quite sure that the Secretary General will have heard your applause, ladies and gentlemen, even whilst it's very early in New York right at the moment. As you know, COPs are always a triad. The presidency past, the current one, and the incoming one. So we're talking about Glasgow, we're talking about Sharm el-Sheikh and Dubai, each building on the achievements and the progress of the others. COP27 will probably go down in history as the UN climate conference where, as the UN Secretary General just said, loss and damage was for the first time addressed and progress was made, and as he was said, saving lives. And it was a momentous step forward for climate vulnerable developing countries. So much to ponder. We would have liked to have had with us this morning the COP27 President and Minister of Foreign Affairs of the Republic of Egypt, His Excellency Sameh Shoukry. But as you well know, the region right at the moment has one or two issues, so he can't be with us here today. But his speech and his thoughts will be conveyed to us by Khaled Galal Al-Abdelhamid, the ambassador of the Arab Republic of Egypt to Berlin. And I would like to invite the ambassador to come to the lectern. Thank you so much.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'm honored to be here to deliver the message of the President of COP27, Minister Sameh Shoukry. Begin text. Your Excellency, Mrs. Annalena Baerbock, Minister of Foreign Affairs of Germany, Your Excellency, Dr. Sultan Al-Jaber, COP28 President-designate, Your Excellency, Prime Minister Motley, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, it gives me great pleasure to address the Petersburg Climate Dialogue once again. I extend my congratulations to the two co-conveners, Germany and the UAE, particularly to Ministers Baerbock and Al-Jaber. Throughout my tenure as President of COP27, I underlined on several occasions that COP27 took place at times of difficulty and despair. In retrospect, the consensus and progress achieved in COP27 held in Sharm el-Sheikh in 2022 reflected the continued belief in multilateralism and cooperation to overcome our common daunting challenges. One major priority in Sharm el-Sheikh was to advocate against backsliding and emphasize that the ingredients for a timely and at-scale implementation in developing countries needs to be put in place. On our way to the UAE, we ought to be guided by the same level of strong commitment and resolve. In this connection, I must reiterate once again that implementation is not about several cycles of ambition, pledges, and plans. Implementation means delivery on the ground, to be held accountable, and to provide finance and other means of implementation by developed countries. Ladies and gentlemen, we left Sharm el-Sheikh with high hopes of enhanced solidarity and a clear outline of implementation. Yet, 6 months later, we are still far from reforming the MDBs. To deliver finance, we are off track on mitigation action and adaptation delivery, and we are still struggling with finding the effective pathway to respond to loss and damage. Mitigation remains a central pillar in our fight against the climate crisis. The most recent synthesis report by the IPCC underscored our deviance from the required pathways to keep the temperature well below 2 degrees while keeping the 1.5 degree alive. In Sharm el-Sheikh, we agreed to the mitigation work program and the first ever just transition work program. Both work programs can strengthen our resolves in the fight against climate change through just transitions that leave no one behind or fail to eradicate poverty. We also responded to the increasing interest in green hydrogen by launching the Renewable Green Hydrogen Forum by Egypt and Belgium. On adaptation, action has been too little and too slow. Adaptation needs are expected to reach $300 billion by 2030. What is currently offered is 5 to 10 times lower than the actual needs. Adaptation challenges are already adding to financial pressures on developing countries. In Africa, we spend more than 3% of our GDP on climate adaptation to the adverse effects of climate change, for which we are the least responsible. COP28 in Dubai must be the conference where parties adopt a transformative outcome on the global goal on adaptation, and agree to continue to meticulously track and report on the commitment to double adaptation finance by 2025. I would like to recall the contribution of the Sharm el-Sheikh adaptation agenda, which set 30 adaptation targets to be realized through wide and diverse partnerships. Funding the response to loss and damage was a historic breakthrough at COP27. This ray of light is a testament to the credibility and responsiveness of our UNFCCC process. Developing countries must be assured that they will receive meaningful, sufficient, timely, concessional, accessible, and predictable funding. The climate crisis must not be allowed to deepen the already soaring debt crisis, nor should loss and damage finance be a repackaging of already existing funds and resources. Finally, about climate finance, I'm afraid that the situation is dismal. It is worth noting that close to $100 billion in military expenditure and pledges have been made available in relation to the war in Ukraine. $9 trillion were mobilized to respond to COVID-19. Yet developed countries continue to fail for the third year in a row to deliver the symbolic 100 billion Copenhagen promise. Without funding and other means of implementation, we will simply be accepting a vicious circle of ambitions and non-performing NDCs. Regardless of how far our climate conversation evolves and how complex it becomes, the fundamentals and principles of the Convention and the Paris Agreement must be safeguarded, including the principles of equity and common but differentiated responsibilities. Simply put, we cannot fight climate change while we condone climate injustice. I cannot overemphasize that finance should be our focus as a catalyst to climate action. The Sharm el-Sheikh implementation plan confirmed the need to enhance contributions to the green climate and adaptation funds. It also demanded the rapid and effective reform of the MDBs to provide more resources, enhanced access to instruments by focusing on concessional finance, and revisiting current surcharges, while ensuring that funding climate action shall not divert the focus on poverty eradication and sustainable development. If we are seriously committed about tackling climate change, we need to deliver on all the components of finance in accordance with the Sharm el-Sheikh implementation plan, as well as other initiatives, particularly the Debt for Climate initiative. Ladies and gentlemen, midway between COP27 in Sharm el-Sheikh and COP28 in Dubai, it is essential to renew our resolve and ensure unity of purpose. There are high expectations for major deliverables in COP28, including on adaptation and loss and damage. Notably, COP28 in Dubai will be the platform for the first global stocktake. We should collectively ensure that GST drives a course correction and stimulates credible responses to science and principles. I trust in the ability of the UAE's leadership and COP President-designate Dr. Sultan Al-Jaber to build on the achievements of COP27 and lead the parties to deliver timely, impactful, and credible outcomes. The Petersburg Climate Dialogue is in a position to deliver bold and unifying political messages across all the main topics on the climate agenda. I am hopeful that the constructive deliberations today and tomorrow will be a valuable contribution to a successful subsidiary bodies session in Bonn and a major landmark on the road to the UAE. I thank you.
Ambassador, thank you so much for delivering that wonderful speech.
Thank you very much.
And now, ladies and gentlemen, we have the handover, the early handover. No, don't worry. The official one will actually start in November, end of November this year, from COP27 to COP28. And Dr. Al-Jaber has already stood up, but just give me 1/2 second to introduce you. He and his team have already been working really hard, and I talked to some of your people that have been working for it for 2.5 years already, and everybody is gearing up to make Dubai 2023 an absolute point in time that we will remember. So it is with eagerness and open eyes that we are going to listen to Dr. Sultan Al-Jaber, COP28 President-designate, to get the title absolutely correct, to share your vision, your outlook for this year's COP of the UAE. And you've also brought members of your team here to Berlin, so we're going to meet a couple of them later on. And with that, could I please ask you to come up to the lectern? I mean, normally one would say come up on stage, but this is primus inter pares. Sir.
Your Excellencies, colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, dear friends, it is indeed a pleasure to join Her Excellency Minister Annalena Baerbock in welcoming you to the Petersburg Climate Dialogue. Let me also recognize the successes of COP27, which are the result of the steady leadership of my dear friend, His Excellency Sameh Shukri, and the hard work of his team. I'd like also to recognize Secretary General Guterres for his inspiring words today. Let me also take advantage of this opportunity and thank each and every one of you for joining us here today at this very important meeting. Colleagues, as you know, over the last 3 months, my team and I have been proactively, I repeat, proactively engaged on a listening tour, where I have heard many voices from the Global South, many voices from major economies, indigenous peoples, NGOs, civil society, and youth, as well as the business community. In fact, many of you here today have shared great insights which have helped deepen my own understanding and helped shape my approach to this task at hand. Over the next 2 days, I look forward to a more informative and constructive dialogue, and I promise that I will continue to listen very closely to your valuable and perspectives as well as your great ideas. Colleagues and friends, it is our collective responsibility, and this responsibility requires our honesty and our collective effort. And as you all know, we can only succeed through genuine and true partnership, through real collaboration and shared purpose. And we all know that is the true foundation of real multilateralism. With me here today are members of the COP28 team who are passionately committed to this very important cause. I am joined by Her Excellency Mariam Lemheri, the UAE's Minister of Climate Change and Environment, and Her Excellency Razan Lembarak, the COP28 high-level champion, and together with the guidance of the United Arab Emirates leadership, we take on this role of hosting COP28 with humility, with a deep sense of responsibility, and a great sense of urgency. Colleagues, we have just passed the 7-year mark since the adoption of the Paris Agreement, with just 7 years to go to 2030. That is 7 years to reduce emissions by 43% and keep the ambitions and objectives of the Paris Agreement alive. This is the year of the first global stocktake that will measure progress since Paris. The most recent IPCC report has already made it crystal clear that we are all way off track. This is a moment of clarity that we must all face with total honesty. We are already seeing the impacts from rising sea levels to failed harvests to food, water, and energy insecurity. Everyone is affected, and the most vulnerable communities across the global south who have done the least to cause climate change are the most affected. These are the facts. The message is clear. This cannot be denied. Our respective responsibilities are also very clear. And it is time for us to come to terms with some realities. In fact, it is time for all of us to get real. We have no choice but to unite and seize the moment of this global stocktake, to put the world on the right track to meet the goals and ambitions of the very promising Paris Agreement. We must accelerate cross-sectoral progress on mitigation. We must ensure countries have the resources and plans to place, and in order for them to be able to adapt climate impacts. And we must supercharge climate finance. We must supercharge climate finance, making it more available, more accessible, and more affordable to drive delivery across climate pillars. While doing all of this, we need to ensure a just and equitable transition that leaves no one behind. With your help and contribution and your true determination, COP28 needs to deliver an action plan that engages the public and private sector to achieve transformational results. This will be underpinned by a robust, negotiated response to the global stocktake. We need equally strong outcomes across all other mandates. This includes the mitigation work program, the global goal on adaptation, and doubling adaptation finance. We also need strong outcomes on the Just Transition Work Program, the new collective quantified finance goal, and of course, the operationalization of the Loss and Damage Fund and ensuring the funding arrangements. I have heard loud and clear that to deliver on all of this, we will have to address issues of trust. Expectations are very high and trust is very low. Developing countries are still waiting for the $100 billion promised by developed countries 14 years ago. This is holding up progress, and as part of my outreach, I am requesting donor countries to provide a definitive assessment on the delivery of this commitment before COP28. It is vital to the political credibility of the UNFCCC process that donors step up to this long overdue obligation ahead of COP28, especially as the real value of this commitment has eroded over time. On top of that, a robust replenishment of the Green Climate Fund this year, alongside enhanced support for the Adaptation Fund, would send a signal of true global unity and solidarity. Trust is also essential in the negotiations process. In fact, trust is a critical success factor. And as COP28 President, I will ensure a fair, inclusive, and transparent presidency that provides space for all parties to reach consensus across the whole agenda. And here, let me assure you that under this presidency's leadership, the negotiations will give space for all parties to discuss, debate, and agree on the role of all sources of energy. And on that point, let me say this, and let me be perfectly clear. In a pragmatic, just, and well-managed energy transition, we must be laser-focused on phasing out fossil fuel emissions while phasing up and scaling up viable, affordable, zero-carbon alternatives. This is the approach we have been taking in the United Arab Emirates for more than 20 years, where we have embraced in practice the energy transition. We know that the energies used today will continue to be part of the global energy mix for the foreseeable future. And as such, we will continue to work with the world to decarbonize the current energy system while we build the new energy system that is capable of transitioning even the most heavy emitting industries. Your Excellencies, colleagues, and my friends, what happens inside the negotiations process is critically important. But we need to match what is agreed in the negotiated text with concrete action in the real world. And this means countries and cities, investors and industries and businesses of all sizes, all stepping up in the same direction. The global stocktake must deliver real economy outcomes. At COP28, I expect ambitious transparent, and accountable commitments from all countries and businesses that will shape policies in parliaments and budgets in boardrooms. We will accelerate delivery in sectors like renewables that must triple capacity by 2030 and double it again by 2040. We will encourage smart government regulation to jumpstart the hydrogen value chain and make carbon capture commercially viable. And the public, multilateral and private sectors must be mobilized in new and innovative ways on the critical issue of climate finance. In my meetings with climate, finance, development ministers and others across the global south, what I hear time and again is that climate finance is simply not available, not accessible, and not affordable. IFIs and MDBs are not keeping pace with the challenges of the 21st century, which is why we need tangible progress this year. It has to happen this year on reform that will unlock far more concessional finance, mitigate risk, and attract more private capital. And governments who have made commitments to vulnerable and developing countries, they must live up to those commitments. And they must start delivering. They must show action. The poorest nations make up over half of the world's population, yet account for just 12% of global emissions. While 800 million people have no access to energy at all. Behind these numbers, you know and I know, are real people. Those people want, in fact, they deserve a better life for themselves and for their families. If the world doesn't come up with effective mechanisms to deliver climate finance to developing and emerging economies, they will have no choice but to choose a carbon-intensive development path. This is an outcome we want to avoid simply because it is in no one's interest. Colleagues, COP28 must also provide tangible solutions to help people adapt to climate change and manage growing climate impacts. This is why we will be the first COP to dedicate a day to health and the first to host a health and climate ministerial. And we need to broaden our definition of adaptation to enable global climate resilience, transform food systems, and enhance forestry land use, and water management. COP28 will also be a space for innovative solutions for nature. We must continue to safeguard natural carbon sinks like rainforests and mangroves, protect biodiversity, and work closely with indigenous peoples to help preserve natural ecosystems. Indigenous peoples represent 5% of the global population, but protect 80% of the world's biodiversity. Their voices must be heard, and their contribution to the climate challenge must be recognized. Our high-level champion, Her Excellency Razan Al-Mubarak, will focus and give special attention on putting people and nature at the center of climate progress. In addition, this COP will put a special focus on empowering youth and as the first officially designated youth climate champion, Her Excellency Sham Al-Mazroui will mobilize substantive policy and programmatic outcomes for the young people. Under her leadership, in collaboration with Yongo, we will ensure that youth, particularly from small island states and the least developed countries, participate meaningfully and effectively throughout the full COP cycle and activities. This is a feature that we hope will be incorporated in all future COPs. Our International Youth Climate Delegate Program is the largest initiative to expand youth participation from underrepresented countries in the climate process to date. This is not a record we want to hold. It is a record we want to see broken, and I hope it happens in the future COPs. Your Excellencies, colleagues, and friends, before I conclude, I just want to take a moment to recognize the people in this room alongside the efforts of many outside of this room. Many of you have devoted your entire careers to public service and the cause of climate progress. It has been a long and hard journey. At times, I have no doubt, it has been frustrating. And I feel your frustration. But we also remember the breakthroughs. We remember the outcomes of Paris. We were all there in Paris at COP21 when governments united in agreement. We must aim to make COP28 be remembered for uniting everyone in true action. And this year, the year of the global stocktake, we have an unprecedented opportunity to turn policies into practical outcomes. Let's please put an end to delays, and let's please start delivering real results. Let's turn passion into pragmatic solutions. Let's end polarization and empower partnership. There are moments in history when humanity comes together to fight a common threat. And advancing humanity has always been one of the core principles of our leadership in the United Arab Emirates. We have chosen to face global challenges head-on by adopting a positive mindset and working on solutions in the pursuit of progress and prosperity with like-minded partners. And it is this mindset that we will bring as hosts of COP28. We believe that game-changing solutions can be achieved if the collective political will is there. And I promise you, it certainly is from the United Arab Emirates. Let's unite in solidarity for the sake of humanity. Let's live up to the responsibility that we have been entrusted with, and let us restore political credibility to the legal agreements that we have not yet fulfilled. I am counting on your experience, your engagement, your positivity, your energy, your ideas, and your continued commitment. From my part, I commit to matching your effort and your dedication every step of the way. Let's work together to deliver an ambitious agenda and a practical and action-oriented GST for 2030. Together, let's deliver a COP of unity, of solidarity and impact, a COP of action and a COP for all. And let's unite a divided world for the planet, for our people and for lasting sustainable development. The world demands transformational progress, and the world needs transformational action. Thank you.
Your Excellency, Dr. Sultan, thank you very much for sharing your passion, and we wish you lots of energy. Now, ladies and gentlemen, for many years there were two tracks of conversation. The one was about climate change, the other one was about biodiversity loss, and they are not really independent issues. They actually belong together, and last COP actually sort of showed that there is a progress to it, and we had progress also in Montreal. So we have the treaty last December, the Kunming-Montreal Treaty, which gives hope, but we also know that biodiversity loss is at unprecedented heights. So it is with great pleasure that Dr. Chabert, you have a wonderful lady at your side, the president of the IUCN, the International Union for the Conservation of Nature, and not only are you that, you've also put something on your other shoulder, because since January you're holding the mandate as UN Climate Change High-Level Champion for COP28. Please welcome, ladies and gentlemen, Her Excellency Razan Al Mubarak, and she's now the high-level champion, but with the other crown on her head.